comrades might have seen that there is an opera called Marx in London, a comic opera about one fictional day in the life of the author of the Communist Manifesto. It had its premiere in Bonn in Germany a couple of years ago, and it's just been produced by the Scottish Opera. We sent two comrades to have a look. First, I want to share the trailer to give you an idea about what this is all about.
14th August 1871, the war undone, in death and on the run. Workers of the world, unworthy of the name, leeches on the lake, for strength.
Lovely. Also had a touch of Monty Python about it. I'm joined by Tamdeen Byrne, who's an actor. You've actually worked with Jonathan Doven, who's written the opera. So a comic opera about Marx. Does that work?
Yeah, it really did for me. I thought it was great. I mean, opera itself in general is not something I've been particularly active in and going along to. And I didn't know about this form, comic opera, that way. I was in one of the examples of it that's similar to this, The Marriage of Figaro, Mozart, taken from a play, and although set in one day. That's seen as an influence on this show. But this began really, as you said, in Bonn. The director there, the opera, Jürgen Weber, he asked Jonathan Dove if he would be into writing ideally a comic opera about March for the 200th anniversary. And Jonathan went for it wholeheartedly. And this was produced in Bonn in 2018, but I mean, it's almost like a caricature, but the Germans didn't really, he says that it took them half an hour to realize it was a comedy. And that, sorry, Tina. But,
No, German.
yeah, but it was then, as a production, it was going to come to Scotland because they have a tie-in Scottish opera with this opera in Bonn. But COVID struck that, stopped that happening. And then they decided, post-COVID, to make a new production. And I think we've been very lucky with that because as a production, which you got a bit of a sense of that, the scale of it, the set of it, and the video projections and all of that, and the costumes and everything, it works wonderfully. And it does certainly have a sort of feel of Monty Python about it. It is quite farcical in many areas. So I thoroughly enjoyed it. Did you, Matthew?
Yeah, I thought it was great. I think it was it not originally also done in London for one show in 2018. It almost as a private thing, I think. And then,
I don't know about that.
The thing is, it only actually did 5 nights. So it did 3 nights in Glasgow and 2 in Edinburgh. You know, so the thing is, it was very impressive. You know, the staging and so on, the music was great.
Yeah.
And, you know, Engels appeared in armor and all this sort of stuff. It's very comic and you know, extremely well done and very and packed out as well. And obviously very popular. It was very surprising, you know, given the fact that opera's not very cheap. You know, not and obviously not a particularly proletarian audience, but absolutely packed to the gunnels.
Do we know anything about Marx? I mean, is it more entertaining or is it you know?
I mean, it really, I mean, from the off, there is a spy, you see, first of all, outside their house, Prussian spy, and then a young guy who is trying to find his origins of his family, and he's been told to go to this house. And then the first scene with Marx is he's playing chess with Helena, their sort of housekeeper, and he keeps making advances on her while she's beating him at chess. But all of these elements that come to play in it, and is, you know, they almost immediately then the bailiffs arrive and they get all their furniture taken away. These are all things that actually happened. It does, as Jonathan Dove said, it's looking at Marx and trying to be truthful to what was going on with his and his family's life, but without the ists or the ism. And in a way, sort of, it's fair enough. It does pay attention to these elements, but it sort of really humanizes them. And the family, there's a bit of a caricature, especially maybe with Jenny, with his wife as the former aristocrat. You know, she doesn't appear politically active or minded really at all, but you do get at least some of the politics. We have a scene at the end of Act One where he's gone to the reading room in the British Museum, and he's finding it hard to sit down because he had carbuncles on his backside, and this was a fact as well that he found that difficult. But he's also exhausted because he's been running around trying to sell Jenny's family silver in order to try and get their furniture back. I mean, it was actually even more difficult for them. Their clothes apparently were in and out the pawn shops through their lives. And it's all been taken. Jonathan Dove, Francis Wheen's biography in particular, he used, and another one, a guy Sperder, I think it is, an American guy, who his book is called Karl Marx: The 19th Century Life. And again, it's sort of probably, you know, isn't concentrating on the politics. But when he falls asleep in the reading room, he starts dreaming of what he would hope is going to happen. And the chorus arrives, big style, and they are singing soon, soon. And they come on en masse. And then you see that in amongst all these Victorian figures, there's also a civil rights activist. There's a nurse with a low pay sign. There's a suffragette. There's a ACT UP activist, and showing that, you know, that history has produced struggles since then. So it's, you know, not necessarily Marxist, but it certainly pays attention to that. And then in a scene later on in the second half, where they have a sort of unlikely commie karaoke competition in the Red Lion pub, where he's taken on this figure. It's an Italian anarchist, and he is a made-up figure for some reason. But he trounces him in a speech that has a big cash prize at the end of it. And Marx, they do project big style, abolish private property, no more inheritance. And it did produce these sort of quiet chortles directly behind me. Were sitting behind me, and I couldn't tell whether this was sort of Schadenfreude that was at Marx's expense, or whether they were how they were tickled by it. But yeah, I do think it you know, it wasn't a fully fledged Marxist production, but that couldn't have been expected. But it did it did pay homage to him, and I learned a fair bit from it as well.
Matthew, opera used to be a working class culture. It was part of working class culture going to the opera, and now it is, only.
Certainly in Italy, yes. Well, it's originally as a form, of course. It was for the masses, but I mean, obviously now, of course, you just can't afford it. So yeah, it's a bit different. Well, the thing is, and obviously people enjoyed it. I mean, there's a number of people. I mean, I usually go most weeks to this. We've got an anti-racist protest in Erskine against a bunch of fascists that keep turning up. But people there had been to see it and they thought it was really funny. So obviously, it was a great production. So obviously, a lot of people thought, were really taken by it, as an event. I mean, it does, as Tam says, take sort of bits and pieces of Marx's actual career. I mean, if I was going to be critical, I would, you say, okay, well, I mean, clearly, Jenny and Carl were very close. I mean, even when Jenny died, she died of cancer. I mean, Engels commented, that really meant that Marx would not survive very long because they were so close, and so it came to pass. And the other person who really, the other person really is also Toosey, who comes out as this sort of flirt. In fact, Eleanor Marx, and really, as a person, Eleanor Marx is somebody who is owed big debts to in this country, particularly by the unions. None of them acknowledge her, and many of them should.
Weak on the female characters, then you're saying the female characters weren't very developed. Not by a man, who would have thought? But we know that for Marx that was an important question, women's liberation, etc. So thank you both. That's really interesting. It's such a shame. It seems to have just finished now. Is it?
The nature of it's but I mean it takes a lot to put on a production, and also the performance, just the technique it involves. They can't do it every night, but I would think there's probably a fair chance that it will come to London. Jonathan Dove, he's been involved.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and he ran the Spitalfields Festival for years, and he's done a lot of stuff in London. And I think there'll be a good chance that it will arrive there, and hopefully, I would imagine he would want, as he's got a sense of community, that he would hope that it was going to be within the price range of people. I'll give it just one, and the Engels. If people go back to the trailer again, it is such a fantastic entrance. He comes in on a penny farthing with these guardian angel wings, and again he doesn't get much in way of politics, but being a true friend to Mark, certainly. And then it finishes on Hampstead Heath, and it's a wonderful scene there, and that reminded me a lot. I spent many times walking Hampstead Heath with a good communist Jack Conrad, and it reminded me of that.
Excellent. So, I mean, Tam, if you're in touch with Jonathan, you might, ask him if he knows anything about the opera coming to other places. It would be absolutely fantastic to spread it. Thank you both very much. That was brilliant.
Okay.